Hi guys. I'm gonna start in a few minutes and wait for some people to join. Hello. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Lauren. I'm here today to answer some of your questions about UCLA and specifically the School of Arts and Architecture, which is the school that I'm in. So to start, I'll introduce myself a little bit. I am currently a second-year design media arts major and cognitive science minor. Last year I lived in Dykstra Hall. That was my freshman year, and then this year I lived in Sproul Cove. I am originally from Northern California, from Santa Rosa, so coming to UCLA was my first time moving away from home and living in LA. And yeah, I currently work for the UCLA Housing Media Team as a graphic designer and illustrator. So you've probably seen my designs if you follow the UCLA Housing Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter page, whether you know it or not. And I have a list of questions here that you guys asked from the Instagram story question bubble. And I'm going to get through these, and then after that, if you guys have any questions, you can ask them in the comment section, and I'll answer them. So the first question is, what is the difference between cognitive science and other sciences? So I'm a cognitive science minor, and the cognitive science major is actually part of the psychology department, so it deals a lot more with psychology than, say, like biology or other kinds of sciences. A lot of the major requirements are pretty similar to the psychology major, but I would say more of the classes deal with, like, mental cognition, just how the brain works. What I think is really unique about the cognitive science major is that you can take a lot of classes outside of like psychology specifically. You can take classes in Anthro, communications, computer science, and all of those classes deal with sort of like human cognition and like the mental workings of the brain. So yes. Second question is, what's the coursework for the Cogs minor like, and how manageable is it? So the Cogs minor consists of 3 background courses. You can choose from 7, and then 5 upper division courses, which you can choose from 13. And so I'm still in the process of working through my 3 background courses, the lower division courses. And so far I've taken PIC 10A, which is Intro to Computer Science. I'm currently taking Psych 85, which is Intro to Cognitive Science, and I've taken Linguistics 20, which is Intro to Linguistics. So yeah, I would say that the cognitive science minor is super doable. Depending on what your major is, definitely. Luckily, my major, design media arts, has been really doable with the minor too. And because it only consists of 8 classes, I would say that if it's something that you're interested in, it's totally doable. So yeah. Are there any organizations/activities at UCLA that explore the intersection of art and technology? So yeah, I would definitely say that there are a lot of activities and clubs at UCLA that deal with the intersection of art and technology. The first one that comes to mind would be Creative Labs, and it's a really cool club that I was a part of last year for 1 quarter. And basically what Creative Labs is that there are a bunch of teams with a group of leads who basically come up with a project, a 1 quarter long project, and at the beginning of the quarter you can apply to a number of these projects. either as, say, like an engineer, a designer, sort of like a facilitator. They have a bunch of different positions that you can choose from. And then once you get accepted into one of these projects, you'll, throughout the course of the quarter, work on this project with a group of other students. There are the leads and then the students who are sort of at the same level of you, just learning from each other. And if you're interested in design, they have a lot of positions for that. They have a lot of positions for people who are into engineering. A lot of these projects are usually like creating apps, and just in general, they all kind of deal with like art and technology at the same time. So it's a really good club to be a part of if you are interested in learning from your peers and sort of getting some experience working with a group when it comes to like design and technology. Of course, that's just one club that I've been a part of, and there are a ton of other organizations and activities at UCLA that you can explore. The next question is scholarships available. Yes, there are scholarships available at UCLA. There are a bunch of merit scholarships that you can apply into. If you go to the scholarshipcenter.ucla.edu, they have they just have a huge list of scholarships that you can apply into. You can kind of filter depending on your major, your background. They have a lot of different like kind of things that you can filter to find a scholarship that kind of fits your background and your interests, your major, and so forth. I personally got a merit scholarship my freshman year by applying through the Scholarship Center at UCLA. The application is definitely doable. There's like a short essay component, and then you kind of write like your list of activities and extracurriculars, and there's a lot of great opportunities. There's also scholarships available within your major. I know Design Media Arts has a lot of opportunities for that. They have, scholarships that you can apply into with like a short essay, and then they also have awards that are given throughout the year for different like events and sort of specific things like that. Okay, now I'm going to get into more questions that have to do with Design Media Arts, which is my major. So yes, the first question is, how would you describe the Design Media Arts major, and what do you like the most? So I would say Design Media Arts is a very unique major. I'm not sure if there's any other majors outside of UCLA that are really similar to this. For some background, the Design Media Arts major is one of the 4 majors in the School of Arts and Architecture, and basically the overall scope of the program is sort of integrating art and technology at the same time, design and technology specifically. The classes range from graphic design classes to learning how to use 3D modeling programs, VR, web design, video, animation. The list kind of goes on and on. I would say that Design Media Arts is a very it focuses more on breadth than depth in terms of like the kind of work that you're going to be focusing on and learning. But I would say I've definitely learned a lot through this program. Every class that I've taken has taught me so much in this very specific area that it focuses on. The major consists of lecture courses as well as studio courses. So the lecture courses are basically your kind of typical college class, where you're in a larger class with a bunch of different students. You have your professor lecturing, and your coursework is basically like writing essays or taking tests based on the lectures, and any other extraneous readings or videos that they give you throughout the class. And then the studio classes are a little bit different and more specific to the School of Arts and Architecture. They are, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but the studio classes are more like the kind of classes that you're gonna find in like a typical art school. So they're more project-based. You learn about a very specific area of study, and you make, I would say, like 3 to 7 projects throughout the quarter based on your work, and every week you kind of learn more about the program, whatever you're using. For example, I've taken typography, so that was a class that's like very geared towards graphic design. In the course of the quarter, we learned how to use Adobe InDesign to create a book about typography. And then I've taken other classes such as motion, which was very geared towards using Adobe After Effects and animating in that program. So yeah, that's I guess what I would say about DMA. And then what do you like the most? I think I definitely like the studio classes the most, and just getting to sort of like use those classes to channel like my creative energy, and yeah, I guess like just it's kind of what I chose this major for, is just to create more work in design and branch outside of my comfort zone in that aspect. Okay, so I have some questions in the chat that I'm going to try to answer. Okay, so I got a question about AAP, and I personally can't answer anything about that because I don't know anything about AAP, and it's the question is, can international students apply to the AAP? So I would definitely check the website. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. I have a question about FEM. So in my bio that was posted on the Instagram story, I said that I am involved with FEM magazine. So I'm part of the design team this year. And FEM magazine is basically a feminist news magazine on campus run by students. And if you are interested in getting involved, we have applications open, I believe, every quarter or every new issue. So spring quarter, I think applications ended at the end of winter. So if you're interested in getting involved with FEM, I would look out for applications to open during fall quarter. Can non-art major / minors get into art classes? Short answer would be yes, but because these classes are very small, the unique thing about the School of Arts and Architecture is that each of these majors are pretty small. For example, my class in DMA specifically consists of only 25 students, and the entire major is probably around 100 to 150. By that, I mean that each class is restricted to about 15 to 20 students. So even if you're in the major, it can be kind of difficult to get into the class you want to get into based on your enrollment time, which is totally randomized every quarter. So if you're a non-art major, it's going to be a little bit harder because you have lower priority. But I do know people who have specifically taken art major classes, not Desmond classes, who aren't in the art major. So that's definitely doable, but it might be a bit difficult, and you would have to kind of check back on a quarter-by-quarter basis. Another question is, did you know what the transfer process into DMA is like? So I came into DMA as a freshman. So I haven't had personal experience with the transfer process, but I do know a number of transfer students. I would say that the application is similar to the freshman application process. Unlike other majors at UCLA, you do have to apply in with a portfolio, and you get accepted into the major right away rather than taking prerequisite courses your first few years and then applying into the major. So that portfolio consists of, a variety of your own personal design work, and as well as a few specific assignments that they give you that you create specifically for the portfolio. And then, of course, like your short essay. Besides that, I'm not too sure what the transfer process is like, but I know that as a transfer student, you do have to take more classes each quarter because in DMA, a lot of the classes that are major requirements can't be transferred from credits outside of UCLA. So the result is that you do have to take a few more studio courses than, say, someone who came into DMA as a freshman. But it's definitely doable, and there are a lot of transfer students in DMA. Can I double major in design media? So for some background, I was originally planning to be a design media arts and cognitive science double major. I started taking prerequisite courses for both majors. And I would say that it's definitely doable. After looking at my 4-year plan, I kind of decided whether or not I wanted to go that route or not. But because the classes in design media arts don't really overlap with major requirements from other majors, you do have to take more classes than if you were, say, double majoring in something that has more overlapping major requirements. So in order for you to do that, you would probably, have to take summer classes, maybe take 4 classes a quarter instead of 3, which is what most people tend to do. But if it's something that you really want to work towards, I would say definitely start taking classes for both right as you start into college, and definitely talk to a counselor about creating like a 4-year plan and looking at your DARs, your degree audit report, and seeing, what classes you need to take in order to fulfill a double major. The next question is, how do students apply for their major? Is the major on our acceptance letters when we're directly admitted to, or do we need to apply again later? So this depends on what your major is. I would say for most of the majors at UCLA, I think all of the majors in the School of Letters and Sciences, you enroll as a pre-major for whatever major you're working towards, and you start taking the prerequisite courses for that. And then after taking all of those courses, you apply into the major, and you'll get in depending on your GPA and the classes that you've taken and so forth. So I would say that's how it generally works for most majors. My major is a little bit different, where when I applied into the school as a high schooler, I created a portfolio and I was admitted into the major as a freshman, so I don't have to apply into it. I'm automatically in the major, yes. Do freshmen stay in one housing, or does the housing depend on what classes you choose to study? So the way that your housing is determined is based on a sort of like a random / priority basis. I don't totally know exactly how the process works, and there is another housing Q&A that you can refer to if you want a little bit more information about that. But typically when you enroll and make your housing portal, you'll have a preference list of all the classes, or of all the housing options that you want to live in. So there are 4 different room types, and you'll so you'll basically create a list of your preference for the housing that you want to live in, and then it's basically sort of randomized as to how, like, what kind of housing you're gonna get, but they try to give you the housing based on your preference. Sorry, I wish I could give you a better answer to this, but if you still have questions about that, you can refer back to the other housing Q&A that we have on our YouTube channel. Okay, are students required to graduate when they earn a certain number of credits? I don't believe so. I think there is a minimum and a maximum number of credits that you can earn at UCLA before you graduate. I would say the maximum, although it is sort of like a cap in terms of how many units you can take, you can petition to take more. And I would say that more specifically applies to people who are, say, like double majoring, or students who just want to take more classes outside of their major requirements. So you're not limited in terms of how many units you want to take before you graduate. Just know that there is a cap, but it's not set in stone. How does the housing lottery system work if a transfer student wants to stay on campus for the second year? This question I don't have the answer to. It may be discussed in the housing Q&A video that I mentioned before, but I think it's kind of, I don't know, it's totally random. So if you want to apply into housing, it works similarly to if you came in as a freshman and you want to live, if you want to live in UCLA housing for a fourth year, the lottery system is similar. I was thinking about changing my major at orientation, but now that orientation is online, would I still be able to change? Yes, definitely. I would check online and see if you can contact a counselor in the major that you want to transfer into. I don't know too well the process of changing your major, but I would say it's definitely doable, even though everything's online. Okay, I'm gonna get back to the questions that were answered, or that were asked on the question sticker. So, okay, one question that was asked was, how does DMA compare to an art school? I would say that the difference between studying an art major at a university and studying at an art school is very different. And I just have concluded this from knowing other people that go to art school and just have a very different workload. The biggest difference is that when you are in an art major at a university, you still have to take classes outside of your major. So you're going to get sort of a more well-rounded experience in terms of what you're going to learn. The GE requirements for the School of Arts and Architecture is pretty comprehensive, so you'll be taking classes in, English, science, humanities, like all kinds of different stuff. And that's typically, I would say most people take those GE requirements their first and second year to kind of get out of the way. So in the process, you're going to be taking more, more of a variety of classes, rather than just sticking to classes in your major. Once you reach, third and fourth year, you're probably going to be taking more classes that are relevant to your major. So yeah, I would say that is the biggest difference. And also just like the social aspect, I would say, because the School of Arts and Architecture is really small, the kind of art community is a bit limited. Obviously, I've met so many people outside of, my major and my school that are, very creatively minded and have these creative interests. And I would say, like, I don't know, it's been really good. It's been really great to meet people outside of my major, because you just kind of meet a bunch of different people with different interests, and kind of bond in that way. At the same time, like, because my major is so small, I feel like I've really gotten to know everyone, and it kind of becomes like this family that you sort of go through your 4 years of college with, so it's really great. Do you know anything about the freshman summer program? No, I do not. I'm sorry. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I was not involved in that. Okay, were you able to use AP credits to help fulfill class requirements? Yes, I would say that's a great benefit of the UC system is that your AP credits from high school can transfer over as course credits. So I got a lot of my GEs covered by AP classes. I would say at least like 3 to 4, as well as some classes that I took at community college while I was in high school. So that's another great thing. If you took classes at a community college in high school, you can also have those credits transfer over to cover some of like your GEs or even major requirements. Yeah. Okay. The next few questions that I got were sort of more related to housing. So the first one is, how was Dykstra Hall? Pros and cons. Did it force you to be social / make friends? So Dykstra Hall is where I lived last year as a freshman. It's a classic residential hall, meaning that that's like the room type that all the rooms in Dykstra Hall are. The classic room type is the most affordable room type. It's smaller. It doesn't come with AC, but I would say it's definitely spacious, and I had a great time living there. I lived in a classic triple, so I had 2 other roommates, and we had a communal bathroom as well. So I really liked Dykstra Hall. I think one of the greatest benefits of that residential hall is that it's super close to campus. Like, right when you get out the door, you're right on Bruin Walk, so you just cross the street and you're on campus already. I would say it's super great for people like me who, you know, are not morning people, kind of wake up late and can just get out the door and go to class. Did it force you to be social / make friends? I would say yes. Definitely. Dykstra Hall is mostly freshmen, although there are some sophomores and juniors that live in the building. Compared to the other classic residential hall, which would be Hedrick, I would say it's a little like less social than that, just from my experience. I do know a lot of people who lived in Hedrick last year, and because everyone in that building is a freshman, you know, there's more sort of bonding. People are more open to meet new people, but definitely during the first few weeks of fall quarter, everyone's super eager to, you know, meet new people on their floor and make friends. So I think it's a great experience, and I loved living in Dykstra Hall. Yes. How did you find your roommates, and did you guys get along? What should we look for in a roommate? So my first year, I chose to go with random roommates, and it was great. I really lucked out because my 2 random roommates became some of my closest friends at UCLA. We really got along, and we did a lot of stuff, you know, outside of just living together. And then my second year, I lived with one of my roommates from the year before, and then a third person who we met and kind of mutually agreed to live with. So yeah, I would say either going random or choosing your roommates online. I know a lot of people do that too through Facebook. Either way is a great option. I think when you're a freshman, I do know people who, you know, kind of ran into some conflicts with their roommates, but for the most part, as long as you're willing to be open to, you know, different people's living habits, you kind of have to accommodate to other people's needs, because no one's gonna, you know, live the same way you do. And especially for me, I'm an only child, and so were my 2 roommates my freshman year. So it was kind of all of our first times living with other people, so I think we were more open to, you know, like different living habits and so forth. If you kind of go in with that mindset, I think you can have a really great experience with your roommates. Yeah. What are things we should and shouldn't get for the dorm? So there is a more comprehensive list of what is and is not allowed in the dorms somewhere online, and as well as in the housing Q&A video. But for like a short general list, you are allowed to have mini fridges or micro fridges. They specifically have micro fridges that you can rent through the school. And then what aren't allowed are personal microwaves and candles, as well as tea kettles. So yeah, just keep that in mind. There are other things as well, but just like I would say the most important things include those. The next question is, do large suitcases fit in plazas? I personally haven't lived in a plaza, so I am not exactly sure how the room works, but when I lived in a classic triple, it's the smallest room type, I was totally fine with keeping a large suitcase in there, so yes, I'd say it's probably doable. Are dorms still open at UCLA? Yes, they currently are. From my understanding, most people have moved off campus, so they do have dorms open for students who weren't able to move back home. But yes. How will UCLA get new students acclimated to campus this fall? So I would say I don't want to speak too much on this because I don't really have a clear answer and I don't want to give any wrong information. But I would say for the most part, you know, everyone's hopeful that we can move back to campus fall quarter and sort of okay. Yeah, I would say we're hopeful that students can move back to campus during fall, and obviously, you know, have more awareness of this virus and put any precautionary measures that will prevent the spread of the virus. But I don't want to say too much because I'm honestly not sure, and definitely more information will be put out in coming weeks / months leading up to fall quarter, so just stay tuned for that. The next question is, did you have a lot of free time in your first year? I would say yes. I mean, definitely my focus was acclimating to the college sort of, I don't know, like college life, acclimating to my classes. I remember my first quarter as a freshman, I was super anxious about like taking college classes. I was so afraid that my classes were going to be super hard and I would have to like be studying 24/7. So I think I put more of an emphasis on studying than maybe I needed to, or maybe was required for the classes I was taking. And then after fall quarter, I kind of had a better sense of like how I wanted to, you know, parse out my time and how to, you know, manage my time and my schedule. So after that, I think I gave myself more free time and was able to enjoy, you know, like the social aspect of college life a little bit more. But, you know, when you're a freshman, you kind of go into this and you're bombarded with like all these new experiences. You're meeting new people for the first time. You're just experiencing a lot of things for the first time. So I think it's a really fun experience and you want to make the most of it. So you don't have to spend every hour of the day studying. There's always going to be time for you to, you know, focus on social life, your friends, and just like getting used to college life. Okay, the next question is, do you and your roommates have to have the same room preference ranking in order to room together? I don't believe so. As long as you have the same, you know, top preferences, there's a chance that you can be paired together. If you're talking about choosing your roommates and specifically like putting in their code, you already know who you want to room with. I think that will override sort of like your preferences, but yeah, I'm not too sure. If you're going for like random roommates, it doesn't have to be like exactly the same. Yeah. Okay. When should we submit the housing application? Is there any advantage to submitting the application before May 1st? This one I also don't know the answer to. I'm sorry. I would say like definitely try to get it in as soon as possible. But yeah, I think, oh gosh, I'm actually not going to say anything because I don't know the answer to this one. What buildings have the best views? I'm not sure. I lived in Dykstra and Sproul Cove, and both of them had really nice views of Westwood. I would say most of the buildings have pretty good views. I would also say, like, it kind of just depends on your luck, because as a freshman, you go in with, like, a totally random room. After that, you do get to choose, like, the exact room you want to live in. And there's more information about that in other videos relating to housing. But I would say, yeah, Dykstra, Sproul Cove, Sproul Hall has pretty good views too. I mean, none of the buildings have, like, terrible views, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Is there anything you would change about your experience at UCLA? I don't know. So far, I've really enjoyed UCLA, honestly. I guess, like, managing my time has always been sort of a struggle for me, and something that I wish I put more emphasis on, like, learning about as a freshman, and kind of figuring out for myself, because everyone's super different, and you can kind of model yourself off of, you know, other people, but at the end of the day, it really depends on, like, your own ability to, you know, do your work, like, how much time you need to spend for yourself. And yeah, I would say that is the biggest one. In terms of, like, social life and everything like that, I think that kind of comes naturally. And because there are so many students at UCLA, like, you're bound to make friends and meet people that will, you know, really change and make your experience at UCLA. Okay, I have a few more questions to get through that were asked earlier, so I'm going to do that. Can you major in design media arts while majoring in something like biz econ? So this kind of goes back to the question earlier about double majoring in design media arts. I think that some majors are harder than others to double major in. Something like biz econ, I would say, would be pretty hard, because biz econ is one of the more like, heavier workload majors. And design media arts, while I would say, like, the workload is what you make of it, because a lot of the classes are, like, studio classes where you're making projects, so it's really how much time you want to put into your projects. When I was trying to double major, I kind of didn't take into consideration, like, how much time I wanted to work on my projects for Desma. So, like, on paper, it seemed fine, you know, taking 4 classes every quarter. But at the end of the day, like, if your goal is to, you know, create a really nice portfolio and create a lot of work that you're proud of, maybe you want to spend more time working on those projects instead of trying to bombard yourself with work, because the kind of work in Desma, it's like the more time you put into your projects, the better results you're going to get, rather than just, like, you study for this and this. Obviously, that's not how it is for other majors, but yeah, I would just take that into consideration if you are a Desma major planning on double majoring, or any kind of arts major for that matter. Just take into consideration, like, how much time each class is going to take for you, and how much you want to focus on certain things. Yeah. The next question is, do you recommend freshmen to take summer courses online? I'm assuming by this you mean like, taking summer classes before your freshman year. And I personally did not do that, though I do know some people who did it. And they were able to get some of their major requirements out of the way really early. So I would say, if it's something that you want to do, go for it. Especially since I know at least ASESH is being hosted online. So, you know, if you're stuck at home, quarantined, and you have nothing else to do and you want to take some classes, go for it. And in general, taking summer classes, I think, is a really great idea. Last summer, for example, I took some classes at my community college rather than at UCLA, and then I had those credits transfer over, and that was really useful for me, because taking classes at a community college is also significantly less expensive. I was able to stay at home and still get units for my major requirements, so that was really good. I suggest that, and as well as taking summer classes at UCLA. because the sizes are a lot smaller and you're kind of focusing on less at once. If you're taking, 1 to 2 classes over the summer, 1 to 2 classes over the summer at once, you can really focus on the classes that you're taking. So it's definitely a good idea, and I suggest it. Okay. Are there lots of networking opportunities for design-related work/companies? I would say, yeah, there's a fair amount of networking opportunities. I know specifically for design media arts, they have sort of a job fair, specifically for juniors and seniors who are kind of working towards getting internships or jobs out of college. And at those events, you kind of dress up nicely. You bring your portfolio and your resume, and you can talk to representatives for companies. And I think in some cases they can hire you on the spot. If not, you get your application in and you kind of get ahead of the pack in terms of looking for jobs and internships. Also, Desmond has a job feed on their website for students, and so companies will get in contact with Desmond and say, I'm looking for a graphic designer for my company, and I want to hire students from design media arts. So you'll already have that upper hand being part of this major and applying into their company. Do you have to be in an arts major to be in an arts fraternity? Okay, so these next few questions are related to Delta Kappa Alpha, which is the fraternity that I'm in. DK is a co-ed cinematic fraternity, so the focus is creating films and analyzing films, anything related to film production. And so I rushed for this co-ed fraternity winter quarter of freshman year, so I've been part of it for a year now. And I would say it's a pretty unique fraternity in that it is pre-professional, but I would say it doesn't really follow the traditional format of a fraternity. We don't have a house. It's more of sort of a well-organized club is how I would describe it. You still do have to rush to get in. So there's a week-long rush process where you go to these events, talk to active members, and sort of vouch for yourself to get into the fraternity. And by the end of that, you will become a pledge and kind of go through the pledge process through the first quarter. And so that's how most fraternities and sororities work, from my understanding. So yeah. So getting back to the question, do you have to be in an arts major to be in an arts fraternity? So I would say DK is the only quote-unquote arts fraternity at UCLA. It's the closest thing I would consider an arts fraternity. It is specifically related to film, so just to keep that in mind. But you definitely don't have to be a film major to be in DK. For example, I'm design major, so has nothing to do with film, really. There are a lot of people in my fraternity who are, engineering majors, science, English, film, TFT, the list goes on. So you're definitely not limited by your major. It just depends on, your experience, your passion for what the fraternity does, and so forth. Yeah. And then the next question is, how is the fraternity you're in like? I would say it's really good. I've learned so much about film production, and it's just been a really great experience. I've met so many great people through it, some of my closest friends. It is very time intensive, but I think it really pays off because I've learned so much about film. I've gotten so much experience and know-how in the industry. Every quarter we do produce 1 to 2 films. So I think that's the greatest benefit of the fraternity is that you get hands-on experience with production, which you can't even get through, say, a film minor, which is mostly geared towards film analysis and so forth. So I know a lot of people who are interested in film but don't want to commit to a major, take specific classes for that, and just kind of want to get into production, will look towards DK. And then, is it competitive to get into DK? I would say there's definitely a level of competition, but compared to other like Greek life, it's not competitive, not super competitive. We do accept a lot of rush applicants every quarter. So if you're interested in DKA, definitely go for it. Don't be discouraged by the rush process. I know it was really intimidating for me when I first rushed, and I was so shocked that I even got in. But honestly, it's very inclusive, and we just want everyone to come in and kind of learn something and, build their skill and kind of contribute something as well. Yeah. So I think that's all the questions that I have that were asked from the Instagram story. If anyone has any other questions, I can answer them from the comments or the question bubble thing. Yes. Okay, so one new question I got was, how has your minor in Cogs affected your major in DMA? I would say it's actually been really great, and I'm surprised that it has sort of been something that I can integrate with DMA more than I expected. So for an example, I took Pick 10A, which was an intro to programming class. And in that class, I learned like the basics of C++. It was my first time learning how to code, and I would say it was a pretty intensive class because there was just like a lot of new stuff to learn. But now I'm taking a class called Interactivity, which is a studio class in DMA, and the basis of the class is learning how to code in a program called processing. So most of the students in this class are coding for the first time, but luckily I did have my experience from Pick 10A to kind of guide me through a lot of like the syntax of the coding language that we're learning. So I think it's been really helpful for me. So that's just like one example of how I've been kind of able to integrate like my minor and my major. And I mean, there's tons of other ways as well. But I would say, yeah, definitely if you're thinking about like choosing a minor that'll kind of benefit your major, like look at like the course requirements and kind of see what classes you're going to be taking that you're actually interested in taking. Okay. One question is, how often do you not get classes you want? So yeah, one downside of UCLA being such a large school is that there are hundreds of thousands of students, and they all want to get into the same class. And the class sizes are pretty large, but at the end of the day, your enrollment time, which is random and different every quarter, can kind of put you at a disadvantage sometimes. So I do know people who have really struggled to get classes that they want to get into, like major requirement classes, because they had like a poor enrollment time. But for the most part, it doesn't set you back too much. At the end of the day, you're gonna get into the classes that you need to graduate by whatever means. If you have to wait one quarter to take the class that you intended to take, it's gonna be okay. You can also sometimes have people hold a class for you, so there's ways around it. But it definitely is a struggle. It's something that I've had to deal with as well, because my class sizes are really small. So that's something to keep in mind, and it's something that you have to deal with every quarter. But it's definitely, it's not going to set you back too much. Is it difficult to take classes in the arts department if we're majoring in the social sciences? So this is similar to a question that was asked earlier, and I think it can be hard because the class sizes are really small. They're limited to around like 15 to 20 students. I do know people who have gotten into DESMA classes who aren't in the DESMA major. I know people who have gotten into art classes who aren't art majors. So if you have a good enrollment time and there are spots open when you want to enroll in the class, then you've lucked out and you can get into that class. But if you're really set on doing it, I think it's possible. Even if you can't get it the first quarter you try to get into a class, you can always try again another quarter. as well as summer sessions, I think is a really good opportunity for people who want to take classes outside of their major, specifically at the School of Arts and Architecture, because you aren't limited by your major, so there's no priority in those summer classes, and you don't have to be like a Desmond major to take Desmond studio classes. Is it impossible to get classes outside of your major? No, it's not impossible. And actually a lot of majors have like major requirement courses that are outside of the major. So for example, Cogs, because it's in the psychology department, most of the classes you're going to take are psych classes. There's no like really specific cognitive science major classes, but then like there are other classes that can count towards your major in, say, like Anthro or communications. So yeah, I would say it's definitely possible, as well as when you're taking GEs, like you'll actually be required to take classes outside of your major. Yes. Okay, I think I got one more question. Oh, okay. Would you recommend freshmen to take clusters, and how hard is it to double major? So I personally didn't take a cluster my freshman year, but I do know a number of people who did it, and I think it's a really good way to get some of your GEs out of the way. And if you find a cluster that you're interested in, go for it. Also, like, I think it's a good way to make friends because the people in your cluster are going to be like the same people throughout. So yeah, I have heard that the clusters can be sort of intensive, so be aware of that. But I think it's a really great program, and you know, if you're a freshman and you want to just try it, go for it. You can always change later on in your freshman year if you decide that you don't want to do that. Yes. Okay, is there a priority registration for classes? So I would say there is priority for certain students, for example, like Regent scholars, and also like based on how many units you have, it can impact your enrollment time, but in general, like, your enrollment is totally random and it changes every quarter. So yes. Okay, I don't think I have any questions left, and we're coming to about like 1 hour, so unless anyone has any other questions, I might end it here. Oh, hold on, I think I got one more question. Okay, another question: how hard is it to double major? So I have talked about this a little bit before, but I think it really depends on the two majors that you're choosing between, or that you want to double major in. So if you are thinking of double majoring, I would say the first step is to talk to your counselor, and they can give you, like the major requirements for both majors, and you can kind of put that into your DARS, your degree audit report, and look at what classes you're going to have to take to graduate, and then kind of create like a 4-year plan, and see, like, am I going to be able to finish in 4 years, or however long it's going to take for you to fulfill all those requirements. Okay, because double majoring does require you to take a lot more units, it can require you to maybe take classes over the summer, maybe take more classes in a quarter, like 4, even 5. I decided not to do a double major just because I wanted to focus more on DESMA, and I would still be able to get what I wanted out of cognitive science through the minor. So yeah, that was my sort of decision process. Should freshmen get a classic or a plaza? I heard that plazas aren't that social, so it's hard to make friends. I think either is good. It really depends on your personal preference. I lived in a classic and I thought it was great. The classics are, less expensive on one aspect. They're a little bit more social because of the communal bathroom, I would say, like, you're gonna be walking in and out of your room more often and kind of passing by people that you see on your floor more often. And also, there are halls like Hedrick that are specifically for freshmen, so everyone's sort of in the same boat wanting to meet new people. But I don't think it's hard to make friends in plazas. I know people who are super communal in their, plaza floors and stuff like that, so yeah. Okay, question, are you in the transfer experience dorms, and or do you know anyone in it that recommends it? I did not live in a transfer experience dorm. I came in as a freshman, but I do know some people who did live in those dorms, and they had really good things to say about it. I believe Holly is the transfer residential hall, and it's a super nice building. It's a little bit farther from campus, but the building itself is really nice. I've heard that everyone gets along really well, and it's a good way to sort of acclimate to like UCLA as a transfer, kind of coming in from a different experience. Yes. Okay, I think that is all the questions that I have to answer. Yeah, thanks everyone so much for tuning in. I hope that I could answer all the questions that you had, and if not, there's going to be more live Q&As throughout the week, so just tune into those. Other students can answer your questions about different experiences and so forth. So thank you so much, guys. Have a great day. Goodbye.